Hello friends, and welcome back to Roots and Refuge Farm. This is Jess. I'm standing out by the street in front of my house, and today I want to walk you guys around and just give you a tour of our little farm and tell you the plans that we have. My husband Jeremiah and I, along with our 6 children, live here on 4 acres in central Arkansas. We have been at this house for a little over 4.5 years. We found this property as a foreclosure, and we closed on it in April of 2014. We moved in at the end of that month. Today I want to walk you guys around and just show you where we're currently standing. A lot of things are not where we want them to be. We have been putting most of our efforts here recently into our garden. However, there are a few other things that we are planning on working on very soon. We have some goals that we'd like to reach by the end of this year, and then kind of some goals that we'd like to reach by like next spring and the beginning of the growing season. The speed of them getting done has really just been determined by the budget being available, and we've just kind of had a list of priorities, gone down and checked them off one by one as we had the resources to do the project. Anyway, let's get to walking around this lovely little farm. Considering the fact that we only have 4 acres here, we have chosen to utilize even the space in front of our house. As you can see, our greenhouse is in the front yard, and of course our garden is over here in the side yard. The reason we chose this location for the garden is because this is actually the flattest location. This is the only area on our property that's not sloped, and it also is an area that received full sun without having to cut down a lot of trees. We did have to cut down one birch tree that was right in the middle of this. Our fenced garden area is right under 10,000 square feet. 2/3 of it is raised beds and 1/3 of it is in the ground. We grow a little bit of everything here, and we do grow throughout the year. We'll be planting the fall garden here in about a month. We're in zone 7B. In central Arkansas, we have a really nice long growing season. So back here in the back corner of the garden, you can see we've got this little space barricaded. But eventually our plan is to put a gate back in here. You can see there's a gate here, and this whole yard is completely overgrown. But that used to be a chicken yard. And one of our upcoming projects, we're gonna finish this fence out, put some goats in there to clean it all out, and we're gonna be building a new chicken coop back in that corner. I love to keep the chickens right next to the garden. We actually used to have chickens in that yard, and we had a large building that we've since moved out. And this time we're going to actually put a smaller chicken coop to house about 25 chickens in that little yard. I love having them right next to the garden because I can throw scraps over there. And it's also nice just because I really enjoy listening to them and watching them, so I love having them right next to the garden space. Let's go walk down the road a little bit and I'll show you the front part of our property. People slow down when they pass by our house to take a look at the garden. We were gonna plant sunflowers, really tall sunflowers along here, and we decided to orient our rows going the other way because I didn't want to plant all of the really tall stuff here. I wanted people to be able to see it because I love to look at other people's gardens. As you can see here, next to the garden, there's a little bit of space before you hit the trees, and now our property goes right to the end here where the trees end, and then it opens up into a pasture that we do not own. So all of this treed area is ours. Everything that you currently see us doing on our property is happening on just about 2 acres. We have 2 acres that are cleared and 2 acres that are not. And soon we will be branching off into the treed part of our property. We don't have a perimeter fence. That is on our list of priorities. It probably will not happen until the winter. The reason being, this is completely grown up right now. It's already July, and we have a good list of projects that we can do between now and all of the brush dying back. It's a lot easier to put fences up when all the underbrush is dead. So our plan is to bring a fence down here and finish fencing in this trees. There are parts that are fenced, and eventually what we would like to be able to do, we want to put a drive here down on this end. And up here in the front, we would like to keep bees. We do not keep bees yet, but that is that's on the list that we'd like to have that established before next spring. And then the rest of that back treat area is going to be something that we open up for goats and for pasturing hogs. All along this roadside, on the other side of the road, there are wild blackberries that grow. Of coming out here and picking them. Our neighbor across the street has given us permission to forage along his fence lines, and I love picking the wild blackberries. That's just a little bonus. We also have some persimmon trees in the area that grow wild, elderberries that grow wild. There's a lot of good foraging here. We do have 29 acres down the road that we share with some friends. It's raw property right now. Our friends are hoping to put like a small house out there, like a, you know, off-grid type cabin, and move into that eventually. But as of right now, it's beneficial for foraging, hunting. Jeremiah does hunt. He'll typically fill his tags, and we will have the venison process. So that's one of our meat sources. We have not grown a lot of meat up until this point. I've butchered excess roosters. We have grown turkeys for Thanksgiving. However, I have felt that it was more beneficial to focus on growing vegetables and just plant-based sources of food before the meat, because I was able to produce so much more in the amount of space we have, because we only have 4 acres. Now that this is well established and the garden is well established, we are looking into branching out and starting to do meat chickens and pigs, and that's all things that are going to be coming here in the next year specifically. Alright, so I've come through this gate, there's the garden, and this is the yard that I was just showing you was a chicken yard and is going to be reconverted back into a chicken yard. It's mostly fenced. This back part is not fenced. We've just got to close that out. We will throw a few goats in there. They will clear out all that brush just in a matter of a few days, and then we can come in and build a chicken coop. This is something I'm really excited about that's going to be an upcoming change. As you can see, there's a stretch of this 6-foot chain link right here, and our very imminent garden plan is that we're going to take that fence down and continue the garden fence down here all the way to about right here. So we'll be fencing in this area, which is about 30 feet long and probably about 20 feet wide. And right here in this flat sunny spot right on the other side of the garden is where we are going to be building a greenhouse out of reclaimed windows. I'm super excited. Now I do have a greenhouse. I'm going to show it to you in just a little bit, but I sell plant starts in the spring, and I also start pretty much our entire garden from seed. I don't generally buy plants, maybe, you know, a few to support some of my friends. I might pick up some clearance plants at the end of the year for, you know, 60 cents at a nursery and just find a place to put them. But 97% of my garden is started out of my own personal seed collection in my greenhouse or directly sown. We are planning to expand our gardening efforts, which I will show you that also, and part of that is going to be doing flowers, perennials, some back to Eden gardening. It's going to be more than double our greenhouse space. By building the window greenhouse, it's going to be something that we actually do heat, and in that it's going to really expand our ability to start plants and to grow more food. So we haven't laid it out exactly yet. We probably will do that, you know, when we get down to building it. But down here is going to be the window greenhouse, which I believe we have settled on making that about 10 by 12 feet. We're also going to build a small garden shed, and we're going to set up a designated area for composting. As of right now, we just have this little bin in the corner, which it's worked fine, but we want to get into composting wood chips and that sort of thing. So we're going to have a larger area here. Currently, this yard that we're in, this just little small area, we have used this as kind of like a holding area. This is where we put our goats to breed them. So we might build some sort of fencing to make a little bit more permanent area for that. This is just when we put the does in with a buck, we put them in this, but it's not super secure. It's not as secure as our other goat fences. They're able to push through that gate, and that's caused some headaches. This is an old dog kennel that we kind of converted into a structure. We've used it to house turkeys. We've used it to house chickens. When the goats are in here, it provides shelter for them. However, we have talked about doing something a little more permanent with this. We just haven't quite nailed down exactly what we're going to do. So this yard's kind of in limbo. We use it sometimes, but most of the time it sits empty. From here, we have a gate into our backyard. Now, we call this the human yard. That's because it's intended to be a space for our kids to be able to play without animals. And for the most part, that is what the human yard gets used for. It's just a place where the kids can play. That's where their playgrounds are. That's where we hang out when we grill. That's where the fire pit is. The only time animals are in there on purpose is obviously our dog goes back there. And when the grass gets high, we just let the goats out here to eat it down. We haven't mowed this yard in a really long time because we just use the goats as our mower. However, this is not goat fencing. This is just welded wire fencing, and if you can see how it's bulging, that's because goats throw their fat bodies in anything that will or will not hold them. They like to just rub up against it. So we don't keep them in there all the time. That they could very easily destroy that fence if they had constant access to it. Now through this back gate is just what we call the backyard. So all of those trees are ours. That is our 2 acres of wooded property. It's wider back here than it is up there at the front where I showed you. And then there's about 100 feet behind this fence that are trees, that's ours too. So we've got 2 acres that are wooded, which, like I said, we're gonna do perimeter fence, and we'll get to that probably really by next year. And then here in the backyard, you'll see random piles of stuff just throughout our property because we hang on to materials so that we can use them when we need to. Now this was one of our original chicken coops. It is also a converted dog pen. The only chickens that are free ranging right now are our roosters. And I'm not sure of this guy's motives. He's probably just lonely and missing the hens. I'm a little scared of roosters, to be honest. So we converted this dog kennel into a chicken coop. Our plan is to actually take this down and move it. We don't want to keep chickens free ranging in this yard. We're planning on just paring down to a small flock over by the garden and then possibly putting in a chicken coop next door at my mother-in-law's house. So at the most, with both properties, we'll have 50 chickens tops. I really don't want to have more than that. Now we used to have a lot of chickens. If you've seen our videos from a couple of years ago, there was a point that we had over 120 chickens broke up between these big coops. And we had tons of eggs. We were getting like 80 plus eggs a day. We had contracts with a local bakery. We sold at the farmer's market. And we bred for egg color. We hatched a lot of chicks. However, it was really hard to keep them healthy in those numbers. And what it boiled down to is we really wanted to shift into the mindset of sustainability, not just producing as much as we possibly could. We only have our 4 acres, my mother-in-law's 3 acres, and then the raw property down the road. And for things like chickens, we really wanted to get to a place that we could be as sustainable as possible with them. We wanted them to be able to free range for a lot of their nutrition. When you have that many chickens in a small space, you can't really count on the free ranging to provide much nutrition. We wanted to be able to feed them organically and non-GMO, which that was completely out of the question buying that much feed. And I wanted to be able to feed them scraps from the garden and scraps from the kitchen, and that be something that supplemented. But again, with so many chickens, it was a drop in the hat. So when our flock contracted a respiratory disease and we were advised to cull the whole flock, we decided we were going to start fresh, that we were still going to breed for egg color, but that we were going to keep our numbers very low. Hi, Cole. Hi. Hey, buddy, do you want to say hi? This is Cole. He was one of my bottle babies last year. I'm actually going to be selling him because he's related to my girls, but I haven't yet. I'm kind of attached to him. That happens so easy. Go back behind this coop, we have one of these Harbor Freight tents. We have a little bit of stuff stored in there. I actually recently saw where Al from Lumna Acres took one of these tents and finished out the frame. He took the tent off and he used the frame to build a structure for his goat. So we've talked about the possibility of doing something like that and using that frame. The tent's still in really good shape, so right now it's storing stuff, but maybe eventually we will use that for something in that nature. Here at the back, we've got trees that we've cut down but haven't chopped into firewood yet. Obviously, we're not thinking much about firewood as it is 100 degrees outside. And here behind, at the very back of our property, like I said, there's about 100 feet that goes back to the fence here. And this is going to be the area where we keep pigs. I am thinking at this point that's probably not going to happen until spring. We were actually hoping to do that this year, but it just hasn't worked out. One thing that has to happen before we put any animals this far back is we have to get our well sorted out and we have to run water back here. As of right now, we're running hoses all over the farm, and it would just be a headache to have animals this far back from the house that we have to water by just a long hose stretched from the house. So this is something that will grow whenever we do the full fence, and I'm really looking forward to getting to a point and raising a few hogs for meat every year, and this will be the area that we do that. We have some really amazing, just majestic trees back here that are huge and old. There are a couple of them I absolutely love. We are planning on thinning these woods out significantly, but we are going to keep the large hardwoods for shade. You can kind of see back there, that's the fort that my sons built. It's quite impressive. They haven't been back there as much since all the brush grew up. Right now, we're keeping our goats in a very small space, which you can keep animals in a smaller space. Now, the issue comes in, it's gonna cost more because you have to bring in hay. If they don't have forage, you have to bring in hay. And they're gonna eat more hay, whereas if they had brush available to them, they would eat less. Another thing is you have to be considerate of worm load. Now, we rotate our goats between the yard that they're in and this yard. And we have to move the boys around to keep them separate from the girls. And so we use all of these yards that might not be intended for goats, but that's how we keep their worm load down. That's how we give them, you know, fresh brush to eat. It's also how we mow the grass in these fences. This is our junkyard, is what the kids call it. This is just where we have accumulated scraps and just materials that we have had left over from other projects that Jeremiah's had left over from jobs he's done. And we just throw them back here just on the off chance that we ever need them. And there have been a lot of times that we had projects we wanted to do. We go back there and we've already got everything that we need to do it, and we can make it work. Now, all of our chickens right now are back here in these two breeding pens. And they, over here are the laying hens, and those are the young chickens that we're raising up. When we get the new coop built, all the hens will go over in that yard together. The breeds of chickens we have are primarily colorful egg layers. We have Americanas, crested cream leg bars, we have Copper Morans, Welsh Summers, Barnevelders. All of these lay blue and brown eggs. We have bred out a line of olive eggers. My goal is that even though I only want to have 25 chickens and then possibly the expansion into 50, I want them to all be ones that are beautiful egg layers. Obviously, this situation here is not ideal. It's also quite temporary. They've only been locked up like this for a few days, and we're actually planning on getting on with the project over there in the next week or two. On the plus side, I am getting to keep all of my eggs instead of having to hunt for them all over the property. So our horses are next door at my mother-in-law's in that pasture, and up here are our goats. Okay, there's Journey Pig, our pet pig, and here are my ladies. Uh-oh, one of the babies has made his way out of the pen. Little boy, what are you doing? Oh goodness, I was not accounting for goat chasing this morning. That is not your mom. I was right, Mama. So back here in the kidding stall, we have Ebony, which was our most recent kid, and her two little bucklings. And we have 4 bottle babies, which we said we weren't gonna keep any goats this year, but it looks like we've settled on keeping all 6 of these. Goat math. It's a real thing, along with chicken math and plant math. If you think you're gonna get into farming on a small scale, just be prepared for the fact that it's gonna be at least a good deal bigger than what you're planning on. So this yard is where we keep all of our does for right now. Now this is about to change as well. People often ask me, you know, do I have enough space to keep goats? And I might not be the best person to ask about that, because obviously my answer is going to be yes. Now we have a lot of goats in this small space. We do rotate them between yards and let them out to give them a break from here, and we also buy very high quality hay that we make available to them. However, you still have to be very proactive against parasites if you are going to have your goats in an area with this high of a population. So we are proactive on deworming. I'm actually starting an herbal dewormer, which I'll be talking more about that soon. And we just do what we can to make sure that they're healthy. However, our goats are very healthy. They are not missing out on any groceries. They're all in really good shape. I've got one that I have a hard time keeping weight on, but it is not for my lack of trying. Our goat herd is primarily consists of Nubian goats, which are the ones that have these gloriously long ears. I also have 2 La Manchas, which are the goats that have no external ears. And I have a couple that are mixed between those 2 breeds. Both of those breeds are intended solely for dairy. They're not typically a breed that is kept for meat like a Boer goat would be. They are obviously full-size goats. These girls are all roughly 100 pounds, some weigh a little less, some weigh a little more. And a full-grown male Nubian or La Mancha is going to run about 160 plus pounds. Their production really varies goat by goat, and it also depends on where they are in the milking season. They kind of start out on the lower end, and then they go up, they peak, and then they come back down. Mayhem here is kind of at the peak range of her production, and she is currently producing almost a gallon of milk a day. She is a really good milker though, and I have some that produce a half a gallon a day being milked twice a day. They do a quart in the morning and a quart in the afternoon. From here you can see our back porch. That is where we keep our freezers and that sort of thing for food storage. And then underneath the back porch is where our walkout is, which is an area we also use for storage. And we've brooded chickens out there before, and it goes into our garage, which is what Jeremiah uses as his workshop. Our goat barn is a building that is comprised of all found materials. As you can see, it's built of fence pickets from the privacy fence that we took down here when we first moved in. It has one main area where the goats can all get in if it starts to rain. However, they don't sleep in there. Oh my goodness, personal space, girls. They all get in there if it rains, but for the most part they don't even sleep in here. And we've got 2 kidding stalls that we use for isolation for kidding. Obviously we're keeping the baby goats, and here we have the milking stall. We do have power run out here, but it's a pretty basic space with a stanchion, a little window, a shelf. From here we can go out front. Now that's the gate that leads to my mother-in-law's house, and here is my greenhouse. Here is my big stack of windows that we're saving for the window greenhouse. And as you can see, we have done just next to nothing as far as landscaping goes in our front yard since we moved in. But I do have plans to use back to Eden methods with mulching and bringing over horse manure to start working on setting up this front yard as sort of a cottage garden space. We're gonna landscape it, plant a lot of perennials, and just make this a beautiful space where we can grow herbs and berries, maybe some ornamental fruits and vegetables. It will honestly be more focused on enjoyment than it will necessarily be on production and just growing beautiful things. Our greenhouse started as a Harbor Freight kit. I often get comments on it because people recognize it as the Harbor Freight greenhouse, that it's a 10 by 12 foot kit you can get for roughly $600 or $700. And that's what this was when it started a few years ago. However, when we bought it, we knew that it wasn't something that was going to be super sturdy or well built. So we did a lot of modifications. We dug out a footing and filled it with gravel. We sunk posts in, built this frame up on the inside to add extra support, and we added supports to help hold the panels on. However, after just a couple of years, through just weather, some high wind storms, and just the wearing of this plastic, they broke down, they broke off, and by the end of last year, half of this greenhouse was just destroyed. So Jeremiah, being the inventive and handy man that he is, he used really lightweight fence pickets and rolls of this 6mm plastic that we just got at the Home Depot, and he rebuilt the greenhouse, or half of it. So as you can see, like half of the roof, it still has the original frame, but then the new panels are built over it, and we had a hailstorm come through recently and tear up the side that had remained. So he's gonna go ahead and completely rebuild the other half of this. Honestly, if we'd had it to do all over again, we would have just skipped the kit and built the greenhouse from scratch. Even if you're not handy, this kit was such a pain in the butt to put together, and I can't imagine how quickly it would have been destroyed had we not reinforced it. But if you already have one of these greenhouses, you can put in work like this and make it a really sturdy structure. Did great this spring with the 6mm plastic. Now I don't know how long that plastic is gonna hold up, but at this point we're just kind of we're trying to salvage the investment that we already made. We are gonna continue to use this even after we make the window greenhouse. Right outside our greenhouse, and kind of unfortunately right here in front of the road, is our well. We do have a deep well. It is over 200 feet deep, and the well itself functions. However, the pump needs to be replaced. We need to build a new house around it. It's a project that honestly isn't going to cost that much when you consider the payoff of not having to water our garden and our animals on city water. However, as of right now, we just haven't had, you know, the $800 to $1,000 extra to do it. That is pretty high up on the priority list. I would say probably after getting our additional goat yard finished and our chicken coop built. That's gonna be kind of one of the next things that happens after that. Now, through the gate, next door to my mother-in-law's house. Another very imminent project is going to be to build a fence, and we're actually fencing in a very good portion of my mother-in-law's side yard that is going to be connected to our goat yard, where we can move the goats over here and greatly expand the amount of space that we're keeping them in. We've talked about using one of these outbuildings as a barn for them. I'm not 100% sure if that's the route we are going to go, but I know we definitely are fencing this space in, which right now they are in a yard that's about 130 by about 50 feet wide, and this is going to be triple the amount of space that they currently have. So that's going to be a really great thing as far as helping with the worm load, giving them more browse, and just overall keeping our goat herd healthy. Oh, I forgot to show you guys one thing back in the backyard. Let's go back there again. There. So I started to tell you guys that we're moving the chickens out of here, but I didn't finish telling you why. About the time we finished building all of our raised beds, I started doing a lot of reading about amending heavy clay soils. Now, our soil here is clay. I mean, it's just very much so clay. There's a lot of shale, there's a lot of rock. It's not great for growing. About the time that we were finishing building our raised beds, I came across the Back to Eden garden film, which I had actually never watched up until this year. So I had heard a lot about wood chips and permaculture using them, but I personally had not gone down the route of searching that out. I'd always mulched, which I found very beneficial, and I'd always mulched with straw. But in learning about Back to Eden techniques, I decided that that was something that I really, really wanted to try. So after this season is over, we're planning on putting wood chips down and beginning that process in the in-ground part of our main garden. And we're actually planning on moving this coop out and beginning the process of turning this main area into a Back to Eden garden. And the reason why, obviously you might be like, why would you need that? You already have a 10,000 square foot garden. One, I love gardening. I mean, just absolutely love it. I love to learn about it. I love to learn about what works and what doesn't work. But we have a really big family, and with the mind of sustainability, my feeling is yes, we have a big garden. I use almost everything out of it. I put up a lot of food. We do give some away to our close friends and family, but there's not really much that's left over to offset any of our feed costs. And we also aren't able to grow a lot of grains. We don't grow much corn. And I feel like if I was able to turn this big area into a space, I could grow a lot more of the large space intensive things. So my mind is, if we do this, we could grow a lot more potatoes, we could grow a lot more corn, a lot of the fillers, to be able to move our family more into a place of sustainability. And also we would be able to offset some of our feed costs. If we grow extra, we can feed it to our animals and therefore buy less feed. So obviously before we do this, we're gonna have to get our other goat yard up and running. And we're going to start bringing in wood chips as soon as we can find a source for them. My optimistic view is that perhaps we will be planting something in here by next spring. I think that would be really cool. If it doesn't happen, my heart's not going to be broken about it. I'm okay with looking at things as a, a 2 or 3 year plan, but this is something that we've agreed on establishing as soon as it works out to do that. One more thing that I forgot to mention is kind of the completion of our big garden. I am a starter. I am an idea factory. I love to think about what's next. I love to conceptualize and visualize and plan and research. Jeremiah, however, is a finisher. He likes to button things up, do the finishing touches. He likes to bring them to the fullness of their potential. So right now, I love my garden. I think it's awesome, right down to having to weed eat the walkways and my little hodgepodge furniture set in the middle. However, Jeremiah has a big vision for this space, and he is so excited now that we have finally reached the finishing stage. So the next thing for our big garden is, of course, going to be bringing in the wood chips and starting this area down the road of being a Back to Eden garden. And another thing that Jeremiah is really looking forward to is he's going to put down weed barrier and bring in gravel to gravel the walkways in here, which will cut down significantly on the upkeep. And then also we're going to build a sitting gazebo right in the middle to just make this a beautiful space where we can spend time, hang out, have meals. And then of course, like I mentioned earlier, down here laying this fence down, building the window greenhouse. We're gonna run water down here. We're gonna repair our well and work on a watering system to the whole farm. The garden will be first, where we do PVC pipes throughout the bed where we can come and just turn a faucet at the end of the bed. When the gazebo is completely finished, we're going to do some sort of rain catchment system off the roof of that so we can have some barrels, rain barrels, just for spot watering. At this point, this space is completely functional, but our goal is to just optimize it, just make it even more beautiful, less maintenance. And because, like I mentioned, we just love the process of learning and trying new things. A lot of these things, like the rain catchment system and the irrigation system and all of that, is just going to be a matter of learning, experimenting, and seeing what works for us and what doesn't. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining me for this farm tour and listening to the way we're dreaming of improving our property. I'm so excited to share this process with you guys. One of the reasons why I love to do tours and just updates is because I personally love having a record to look back at, because especially in those moments where things get really discouraging, I love being able to look back and be like, wow, look at how much we've actually achieved in this amount of time. 4.5 years ago, when we moved into this property, had I been given the opportunity to see it just how it is right now, with all of the messes and all of the, unfinished projects, I would have been absolutely elated to get to live here and get to experience this every day. So try to keep that in my mind as we step forward. I know there's going to be a lot of changes happening soon. Make sure you subscribe and keep an eye out for all of these wonderful things happening on our farm. And we absolutely love sharing this journey with you guys. Thanks for watching. Until next time.